Hey guys, Zibboyeye or just Zib is fine, and today we're looking at another J-horror classic. Back in the day, if VHS tapes didn't have you shaking, it was likely Japanese houses. But either way, you were hiding from girls with long black hair. I'm of course talking about Ju-On and its American remake, The Grudge. The history of Ju-On is a bit complex. The mind behind Ju-On belongs to one Takashi Shimizu, who wrote and directed the first 4 films and more. Shimizu started work on Ju-On as early as film school. Originally a short film he submitted under the name Kate Homon, this would be the first iteration of Ju-On. Shimizu later adapted his idea into 2 more short films for the TV movie Gakko no Kaidan G, or School Ghost Stories G. Takashi Shimizu would end up reworking these stories into his direct-to-video films Ju-On the Curse 1 and 2. However, sadly, these films never received a physical release in America. Thus, I'm skipping the first 2 films to cover their sequel, Ju-On The Grudge. Ju-On The Grudge arrived to Japanese theaters in 2002. Meanwhile, in America, The Ring had just popularized Western J-horror remakes. Ju-On would be soon to follow that trend with 2004's The Grudge. I'll be covering both Ju-On The Grudge as well as The Grudge, but for ease of distinction, I'll refer to the Japanese film simply as Ju-On. That being said, let's start this off with the film that started it all. In theaters at least. Ju-On. The story of Ju-On follows inhabitants and visitors of a house once owned by the Saekis. However, the murder of Kayako Saeki and her son Toshio left the house in the grip of a powerful Ju-On. A Ju-On is a curse born of having died in a powerful rage. Everyone who enters the house will meet death. Before I get into the thick of it, I'd like to give a quick aside to Ju-On's English dub. English dubs are always a nice courtesy to me.
Come here. It's alright.
I appreciate the ease of accessibility it gives to English speakers. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the film itself. One of the aspects of the film I admire is its horror. Ju-On features a minimalist sound design with several instances of silence. The sparing use of music allows the soundtrack to pack a punch when it kicks in. Silence is a very effective tool in horror. The anticipation for the next sound heightens suspense. The scares' pace complements this. The scenes have a slow build, allowing a lingering suspense of unease to settle in the viewer. Of course, the icons behind the series play a part in its horror as well. Toshio and Kayako represent the importance of sound design in the film. Just as the spirits are given a distinct appearance, they are given a unique vocal quirk. Toshio meows and shrieks like a cat, while Kayako's presence is given by a perpetual croak. I believe the audio adds another layer to their characters. How many horror antagonists can you think of where not dialogue but vocal performance alone is just as iconic as their visual portrayal? The film handles Kayako's appearance just as skillfully. The first third of the film avoids revealing Kayako's face. It built a mystery around her that kept me on the edge of my seat for that first glimpse. I hold much reverence towards Kayako's actor, Takako Fuji. Fuji has been there since the very beginning. Shimizu enlisted her help back in college with Kate Homon, where she played a precursor to Kayako. She would follow Shimizu as Kayako all the way up to The Grudge 2 in 2006. I think that her time with Kayako allowed Fuji to understand and play her superbly.
かや子の悲しさですとかそういった演出も入ってきまして、最終的に結構人間っぽくなった部分はすごくありますね。で、今は怒りの部分もそういう人間っぽさも全部ミックスできるように気をつけてます。
In my mind, she is the Kayako actor. I admire her acting along with Shimizu's direction for the character. Fuji's performance seems to be inspired by a genre of Japanese dance theater known as Buto. Buto is an art form developed in the late 50s at the tail end of the Minamata disease. This is no coincidence. Minamata disease was the result of mercury poisoning that gave its victims impaired coordination as well as tensed muscles. This would go on to inspire the slow movement and limp and twisted limbs used in Buto. Because of this, a Buto dancer can resemble that of a crudely animated corpse. Knowing Buto, I could not help but recognize the similar movements Fuji utilized in her performance. By adapting aspects of Buto into her performance, Takako Fuji and Shimizu were able to convey the weakness and death in her character, creating the chilling sight that is Kayako. Shimizu's writing appealed to me as much as his horror. The segment Izumi serves as the conclusion to a storyline from Ju-On the Curse. Although it's a plot detour in terms of this movie, I appreciate its contribution to the whole of Ju-On's story. It's a shame I couldn't appreciate it as much due to Ju-On the Curse's lack of availability here. I enjoy how Kayako's story is presented in the movie. Her croak holds meaning.
かや子は、多分喉も潰されて喋れない声も出せないという状況に陥っていたという裏設定になっています。それであーという声なんですけれども。
The film never explicitly explains this to my liking. Rather than stopping the pace to tell this backstory, it's a detail left for the viewer to discover on their own. The indirect storytelling is not contained to Kayako alone. The story is told through an unconventional structure. The film is split amongst character segments presented in an anachronistic order. To decipher the order of events, the viewer must find links between each segment.
もしもし、ひとみですけど、お母さんの具合どうなんでしょうか。心配してるので、とりあえず一度連絡をください。もしもし、ひとみですけど、お母さんの具合どうなんでしょうか。心配してるので、とりあえず一度連絡をください。
Many films would stray away from this as it can cause the film to enter a worrisome territory. As the story partially relies on the audience to interpret events, it risks confusion. However, I enjoy this forfeit of control on the narrative's part as it results in a film that trusts in the intelligence of its audience. It yielded a rewarding experience for me. I enjoyed playing detective, connecting the dots, and piecing together the narrative. Ju-On is an effective take on the haunted house film. The excellently designed slow-paced horror digs the film beneath your skin. The anachronistic structure of the story pushes the viewer to engage with the film's plot. Ju-On is an eerie and unique film that earns its right as a J-horror classic for me. It's no wonder it was one of the first films to come west during the J-horror boom. So let's see how its remake fared and look at The Grudge. The remake follows the same scenario. Several persons have encounters with the late Sayakis that occupy the cursed house. The localization is very unique. Most remakes of foreign works translate both location and nationalities of the character to that most familiar with its target audience. For example, The Ring took the Japanese characters in the Japanese locale of Ringu and made them American characters in America, whereas The Grudge translates Ju-On's characters to Westerners while maintaining its Japanese setting. This leads to a small shortcoming. Having a stark majority of Westerners in the ethnically concentrated Japan took me out of the film, if only by just a bit. Easily overlooking that, I commend the choice of keeping the Japanese setting. The kind of spirits the Sayakis become, Onryo, are a part of Japanese belief. Thus maintaining the Sayaki's ethnicity and location feels authentic. The house would not be the same if it were to be of typical American architecture. Japanese hallways and rooms are smaller than that in the Western world. By maintaining the Japanese house, the remake preserves a sense of claustrophobia. The cinematography makes an effort to mimic the original as well. Many of the shots from Ju-On are remade in The Grudge. To make matters even better, the actors of Kayako and Toshio reprise their role, coinciding Takashi Shimizu's return as director. It goes without saying, Kayako and Toshio bring their grade A performance west. And the film carries a similar minimalistic audio. The horror isn't one-to-one though. To illustrate this, I will mostly be comparing Hitomi and Susan's segments, which cover the same basic plot. A girl on her way home from work becomes the target of the curse. When Hitomi and Ju-On sees Kayako, she asks the guard to investigate, leading to his demise. When the Grudge's Susan requests the guard's attention, he finds nothing and walks away, leaving Susan to observe the monitor. I think the Grudge's adaptation of this scene is a big improvement. It is more sensible. The officer, as far as we know, has never entered the cursed house. So how could he have incurred Kayako's wrath? On top of that, the officer's lack of finding in the Grudge lures the audience into a false sense of security, making them more vulnerable for the scare. That isn't the only thing I prefer about Susan's segment over Hitomi's. I like this one shot from the Grudge absent in Ju-On. It alludes to Kayako's movements while keeping her whole visage unknown to the audience. On the other hand, the film is, at the same time, premature regarding Kayako's reveal. Kayako shows her face very early, 30 minutes earlier than her reveal in Ju-On. Because of it, there's less suspense built around Kayako's look than in Ju-On. The biggest changes to the horror can be considered an aspect of the film's localization. The scares were given a faster pace, better fitting into the Western horror scene. For instance, once Hitomi scurries back into her apartment, it takes around 2 minutes for the payoff. Meanwhile, for Susan, this moment is shortened to under half a minute. I could try to assert which one is better, but like most art, I believe it comes down to preference. I enjoyed the horrors of Ju-On as the time it took for the scares to sneak up on me engrossed me in the film's suspense. If you prefer the quick escalations that characterize Western horror, The Grudge won't fail to provide you the thrills you're looking for. The story and presentation are the most distinct when compared to the source material. Although the narrative shifts to other characters commonly, Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, Karen Davis, is given much of the focus. Her character guides the audience through the backstories of the Saekis as she investigates and observes the reason behind their death. Karen is a much more traditional protagonist as she guides us through story information. However, this forfeits the trust Ju-On had in its audience to digest the plot on their own. I preferred the storytelling in Ju-On that allowed its viewer independence over The Grudge, which takes a more conventional approach that, in comparison, holds your hand. To end on a positive note, I'll discuss my favorite addition to The Grudge that makes it more than just a remake of Ju-On The Grudge. A few of the plots in The Grudge are lifted from Ju-On The Curse. This means The Grudge provides pertinent information regarding the details behind Kayako's death that were only in the series' first entry. The Grudge's plot is a marriage between Ju-On The Grudge and Ju-On The Curse. It shows a care for the series as a whole on the writer's part to go beyond remaking just one film. The circumstances surrounding Ju-On The Curse make me appreciate this even more. At the time, Ju-On The Curse had no wide English release. I was only able to find it in this UK DVD that seems to be exceedingly rare. The film's widest English release is limited to streaming as an exclusive on Shudder, but that's over a decade and a half after it was released. For years, the only way to legally watch Ju-On The Curse, to some extent, was The Grudge. The Grudge provided information and backstory English fans of Ju-On would be left without otherwise. The Grudge has appeals to fans and newcomers alike, but how does it compare? The plot, acting, and cinematography is faithfully remade, but the story structure and horror are the fork in the road that splits Ju-On from The Grudge. The Grudge's faster pace may make it a more thrilling film for some, but I preferred the slow walk through Ju-On's eeriness. The suspense, atmosphere, and unique story presentation make Ju-On my preferred experience. But no matter which I favor, both films are but a footstep in the real-life journey of Takashi Shimizu. He took his idea from film school to a TV special to DVD to theaters to the Western world, all with his confidence and faithful actress Takako Fuji supporting him along the way. Takashi Shimizu's work on Ju-On is a testament to how belief in yourself can carry your ideas and aspirations from small acorns to big trees. I've been Zibboyeye, or just Zib is fine, and thank you for watching. Zibbo, bye bye!